I'm going to talk about three plays today. The first is Hour of the Wolf at the Malthouse until 3rd of December. And the premise of this play is that a small town called Hope Hill is visited once a year for an hour between 3 and 4 a.m. by a wolf woman. Yes, a wolf woman who visits horrors upon members of the town, and perhaps it's just to those who deserve it, not certain. This is described as a immersive or totally immersive performance, and audience members can choose their own adventure. And it is fascinating and potentially a theatrically compelling idea that unfortunately is not wholly successful. Form has become the focus at the expense of content, I think, and the concept has not quite translated into a dramatic whole, despite its interest and its structure. So audience members are funneled into a scarily cramped holding corridor and provided with headphones and some cursory instructions over the earphones. The ones in the foyer were virtually inaudible. A woman's voice narrates into our ears that she visits this town once a year. The wolf, we presume? And we're ushered into a walled-off space that's a specific location. And other groups may start elsewhere, but my journey, or our journey through the story, started in a karaoke bar, different conversations taking place. Then with instructions over the earphones, we're told to either follow a character or move to another room or just try a door. So we moved to the scene of a car crash, a convenience store, a couple's bedroom, a film set in a church, a hospital waiting room, and finally a small gymnasium where a woman appears to have killed a man whose body has disappeared. End of our experience. Other members have different experience altogether, start different places, and some wander off to explore rooms or sticky beak in the crashed car or scour shelves in the convenience store or peer at photos on walls. You could just miss the entire narrative and all the scenes by just exploring this marvellously detailed, elaborate set design by Anna Cordingley, which I think is probably the star of this production. So we are voyeurs on the private conversations of various townspeople, and this provides a sort of frisson of impending drama or danger and a feeling of being where we should not be. Hour of the Wolf has a lot of promise and has had a lot thrown at it, including personnel and multiple storylines and complex set and physical structure built inside the Merlin. It's amazing. Unfortunately, the technology let it down at times. There are some problems with plotting and narrative and dialogue as well, and I expected there to be greater menace or a greater sense of menace in the space or genuine danger, but it was also downplayed that at no point did I feel anyone was in any real danger, and there was little heightened drama in each scene, despite that sort of nervy urgency of the characters, and there's sort of no payoff at the end. It just peters out, and we don't meet the wolf. Perhaps other people met the wolf. I suspect that Natasha Herbert was playing the wolf woman and we missed it completely. And I believe she was the narrator. It's also odd that in a town that's had such a history, a long history of appeasing this wolf woman, that there are no old people. Strange. All right, next play, Flake by Dan Lee at Red Stitch until 5th of November. So when globe-trotting 68-year-old hipster Murph visits his old mate Bob, played by Robert Menzies, in his run-down hideaway in Hanoi, in Vietnam, it becomes apparent that Bob, who's limping and feeble and unkempt and often confused at the beginning of the play, is displaying early signs of dementia. We assume, or I assume that. But in Flake, Bob has a plan to exit this mortal coil in his own time and on his own terms. No spoilers here. So a young Vietnamese woman arrives with Murph. It becomes clear that she has more connection to Bob's abode, this shabby flat, than just her presumably accidental meeting with Murph can explain. So Joe Petrucci's Murph is big and audacious and adventurous and irresponsible and unwilling to accept aging or admit to his failings as a father of multiple children by different mothers. Menzies as Bob is cynical, reclusive, articulate, verbose, and a bitter critic of Murph, and just about everyone else, actually. So this fun reunion that Murph expects, with fond reminiscences about their shared hippiedom in Melbourne, degenerates into a series of beer-soaked Barneys in which Bob and Murph trade insults and dredge up old sins. It's difficult to understand why Murph still maintains this friendship with Bob, actually, who teases him mercilessly and patronises him and is passive-aggressive. And I have to say, it was mostly seniors at the matinee performance I went to, and they were reacting to issues of aging and loss of independence and forgetfulness and failing faculties with groans and laughs of recognition. It's directed by Ella Caldwell with a light hand, and it's set in this actual shabby kitchen in Bob's Hanoi haunt. And all these worn surfaces mirror his declining health. And it becomes clear that Bob is bitter and haunted and has absolutely no contact with his only son in Australia. So Dan Lee's script is well structured, with a plot peppered with revelations about characters and sharp, unexpected turns in the narrative, and it paints a vivid picture of Hanoi outside. Some monologues seem overwritten and verbose, but essentially the intensity of this performance by Robert Menzies, although because he's been ill during rehearsal, he was using his script during the performance, it still carries the impact of this grumpy old man and makes him sympathetic. I want to talk about, just briefly, Othello by the National Theatre in the UK. It's being screened, well, was being screened until the 27th, and then you can pay for it. National Theatre at Home. Really worth seeing. It's a very high quality production, directed by Clint Dyer, and it belts along like a juggernaut. It opens with Iago, played by Paul Hilton. You recognise him from British TV, leading a band of rowdy and angry men, including Roderigo, who Iago has whipped into a jealous frenzy, informing Brabantio, who's the father of Desdemona, about his daughter's secret marriage to Othello the Moor, who is played by Giles Terera, who was in Hamilton, playing Aaron Burr, I believe. So at the very beginning, we see this overt racism against Othello, and Iago, who's Othello's false friend, dangerous, treacherous fellow, bellows, "An old black ram is tupping your white ewe," to the father of Desdemona. And Iago sets in motion his vile and treacherous vendetta against Othello for overlooking him for promotion. It's a very interesting design, set raked steps and dark grey. Everything reflects this venomous, arch, insidious Iago that Hilton plays, and who compels the Moor, Othello, to murder Desdemona in his misplaced jealousy. The other wonderful thing is this group of actors who play other characters, but are all a chorus called the System, who are echoing Iago's emotional and psychological manipulation of Othello. So it's writ large in every gesture of this group, this chorus, resonating through him and behind him. It's inventive, it's imaginative, it's potent, highlights that racial hate speech that may not be as evident in other productions. So it's really worth getting a look at. That's it for the moment.